A man can survive an insult, but many men are destroyed by what they do with it afterward. My friend, listen carefully. There is a moment when someone says something that cuts too close to the bone. A careless sentence, a mocking tone, a look that says you are smaller than you believe yourself to be. And suddenly, the present disappears. You are no longer only standing in front of that person. You are standing in front of every face that ever laughed at you, every voice that called you weak, every room where you felt invisible, every memory where you swallowed humiliation because you did not yet know how to defend yourself. This is how anger works. It does not always arrive from the moment in front of you. Sometimes it rises from years beneath you. And when that old pain wakes up, it does not ask for peace. It asks for revenge. You begin to imagine the perfect response, the sentence that would silence them, the success that would make them regret looking down on you, the future where they finally see you standing above the version of you they once mocked. And for a moment, revenge feels like strength. It feels clean. It feels deserved. It feels like justice wearing black armor. But here is the harsh truth. If your peace depends on watching someone else suffer, you are not free. You are still chained to the person who wounded you. This video is called Stoic philosophy. Control your reaction. Control your life. But today, we are not going to speak about calmness, like it is a soft and peaceful thing. No, we are going into the darker place. The place where a Stoic man is insulted, humiliated, provoked, and still feels the animal inside him pulling against the chain. Because a Stoic man is not a stone. He still feels the heat. He still hears the insult, replaying in his skull. He still imagines revenge at 2 in the morning. He still has a past. Maybe as a boy he was mocked at school. Maybe he was pushed around, laughed at, treated like he was weak, strange, too quiet, too poor, too soft, too different. Maybe he never fought back. Maybe he went home with clenched fists and a burning throat, promising himself that one day he would become someone they could never disrespect again. Then he grew older. He read Marcus Aurelius. He learned about discipline, judgment, virtue, and self-command. He told himself he had mastered his anger, but one insult proves the truth. The boy inside him is still bleeding, and the man must now decide. Will he let that wounded boy drive the chariot of his life? Or will he take the reins back? This is not a lesson about pretending you are calm. It is not about allowing people to disrespect you. It is not about becoming passive, numb, or harmless. Stoicism is not weakness dressed in ancient words. Stoicism is the discipline of looking directly at your anger without becoming its servant. You will learn why one small insult can feel like a blade, because it touches a wound that was never healed. You will see how revenge enters the mind like a wolf pacing in the chest, promising power while eating your peace. You will understand why the Stoic pause is not gentle. It is the last grip on the reins before your emotions drag you into regret. You will learn why anger is a hot coal you keep carrying long after the person who hurt you has walked away. And finally, you will meet the truth beneath the iron mask of rage. The pain, the shame, the frightened child who wanted revenge because he never received protection. My friend, this journey is not clean. It is not pretty. It is not the polished version of Stoicism people post on walls. This is the real battlefield. Not the insult, not the enemy, not the person who disrespected you. The battlefield is the moment after. The moment when your mind begins to build a weapon. The moment when your pride whispers, "Make them pay." The moment when your past reaches for the steering wheel. And if you cannot control that moment, you do not control your life. So stay with me, because by the end of this, you may not become softer. You may become something far more dangerous. A man who can feel rage fully, see revenge clearly, and still refuse to let either one become his master. The old thorn in the soul was never pulled out. An insult is rarely just an insult. Sometimes it is a hand reaching into your past and pressing on the wound you swore had already healed. My friend, this is where the story begins. A Stoic man is standing in the present. His face is calm. His voice does not shake. His body does not move toward violence, argument, or panic. From the outside, he looks disciplined. But then someone says one sentence. Not a long speech, not a physical attack. Just one sentence. A sentence with contempt hidden inside it. A sentence that sounds small to everyone else, but lands inside him like iron. And suddenly, his mind is no longer in the present. He hears the laughter from school. He sees the hallway again. He remembers being younger, smaller, quieter. He remembers standing there while other boys mocked the way he looked, the way he spoke, the way he walked, the way he existed. He remembers wanting to answer, but having no words. He remembers the shame of freezing when he wanted to fight back. That is the part of anger most people never understand. The insult in front of you may be small, but the wound behind it may be ancient. This is why some men explode over a comment that seems minor. The world thinks they are overreacting. But inside, they are not responding to one person. They are responding to every person who ever made them feel powerless. The Stoic man in this story has studied philosophy. He knows the words. He knows that people are disturbed not by things, but by their judgments about things. He knows that Marcus Aurelius taught self-command. He knows that anger is dangerous when it takes the throne of the mind. But knowledge does not automatically heal the boy inside him. That is the harsh truth. You can read every Stoic book and still be controlled by a wound you refuse to name. He does not shout, but he replays the sentence. Again, again, again. At first, he tells himself he is analyzing it. He says he is trying to understand what happened. He says he is being rational, but he is not being rational. He is touching the thorn, the old thorn, the one still buried under the skin of his soul. Each replay pushes it deeper. Each imagined comeback makes the wound bleed again. Each fantasy of revenge gives him a temporary sense of strength, but afterward, the emptiness returns. Because revenge cannot heal humiliation. It can only decorate it with power. As a boy, he learned a silent lesson. If you are weak, people will hurt you. If you are quiet, people will step over you. If you do not answer, people will think they have won. So he grew up and built a new self, a harder self, a controlled self, a man who does not beg, a man who does not break easily, a man who speaks less, observes more, and keeps his emotions behind iron gates. But now, one insult has shown him the truth. The iron gates are not peace. Sometimes they are only a prison with better architecture. The boy is still inside, still waiting, still ashamed, still asking why no one protected him. And when someone disrespects the man, the boy whispers, "Not again, never again. Make them pay." This is the dangerous moment. Not the insult itself, the moment when old pain begins to dress itself as justice. The Stoic man tells himself he wants fairness. But beneath that, he wants reversal. He wants the one who humiliated him to feel small. He wants the world to witness his strength. He wants the past to kneel before the future he has built. But the past does not kneel. It only echoes. And if he keeps answering the echo, he will spend his whole life fighting ghosts. The first Stoic lesson is not to suppress the anger. Suppression is cowardice, wearing silence. The first lesson is to see the anger clearly. To say, this is not only about what happened today. This is about the child I was. This is about the shame I carried. This is about the helplessness I never processed. This is about the part of me that believes respect must be forced because it was once denied. That honesty is brutal, but it is clean, because the moment he sees the real wound, the present insult loses some of its power. The person who insulted him is no longer a giant. They are only a match. The fire was already inside. And if he does not understand that, he will blame every match for the forest he never cleared. My friend, many men live this way. They do not heal. They sharpen. They do not release the past. They train themselves to win against it. They call it ambition. They call it discipline. They call it becoming dangerous. But if the fuel is still humiliation, the machine will eventually destroy the driver. Stoicism asks for something deeper. Not weakness, not softness, not pretending the insult did not hurt. It asks for ownership. A Stoic man must be brave enough to ask, why did this cut me so deeply? Was it the truth of the insult? Or the memory it awakened? Was I defending my dignity? Or defending the frightened boy inside me who still believes silence means defeat? That question is the beginning of freedom. Because until he asks it, his enemy is everywhere. In every tone, every look, every criticism, every delayed reply. Every person who does not respect him quickly enough. But once he sees the thorn, he can stop worshipping the pain as truth. He can remove his hand from the wound. He can stop replaying the scene as if repetition will rewrite history. He can say, I was hurt then. I am triggered now. But I do not need to become a servant of either one. This does not mean he lets disrespect continue. A Stoic man can set boundaries. He can speak clearly. He can leave the table. He can remove access. He can refuse to tolerate patterns that poison his peace. But he must not confuse boundary with revenge. A boundary protects the soul. Revenge keeps the wound alive. And this is where the old thorn must finally be faced. Not with rage, not with performance, not with another fantasy of future domination, but with the quiet courage to admit that the anger is guarding grief. The insult was only the surface. The real battle is underneath. And if the Stoic man wants to control his reaction, he must stop asking only what they did to him. He must ask, what part of him still belongs to what happened long ago? That is the first lesson. The thorn must be seen before it can be removed, because a man who never pulls the thorn from his soul will mistake every touch for an attack. And now we move deeper, because once the old wound begins to bleed, something darker wakes inside him. The wolf of revenge begins to chew through the chain in his chest. The wolf of revenge begins to chew through the chain in his chest. Revenge does not enter the mind as evil. It enters dressed as justice. My friend, this is the second descent. After the old thorn is touched, the Stoic man does not immediately explode. He does not scream. He does not throw his hands into the air. He does not give the world the satisfaction of seeing him lose control. No, he becomes quiet. But do not mistake that quiet for peace. Inside him, something is pacing. A wolf, dark, hungry, patient. It does not bark at first. It whispers. Remember what they said. Remember how they looked at you. Remember the laughter from school. Remember how small you felt. Remember how many times you swallowed your anger because you had no power. And then the wolf offers him a promise. Never again. This is the seductive part of revenge. It makes a wounded man feel as if he is finally protecting himself. It tells him that anger is dignity. It tells him that cruelty is strength. It tells him that making someone regret disrespecting him will finally close the wound. But revenge is a liar with good posture. It speaks like a king, but it feeds like a parasite. The Stoic man begins to imagine scenes. He imagines answering with a sentence so sharp that the other person has no reply. He imagines becoming successful enough that everyone who once mocked him feels ashamed. He imagines walking past old enemies with a calm face, not because he is free, but because he wants them to feel his silence as punishment. He imagines their regret, their embarrassment, their downfall, their realization that they underestimated the wrong man. And in those fantasies he feels powerful. For a moment, he is no longer the boy in the school hallway. He is no longer the one being laughed at. He is no longer the one standing there with heat behind his eyes and no words in his mouth. Now he is the judge. Now he is the blade. Now he is the storm. But here is the harsh truth. If your strength requires an audience of people who once hurt you, it is not strength. It is still captivity. The Stoic man must see this clearly. Revenge feels like movement, but often it is only a circle. You are still orbiting the person who insulted you. You are still waking up inside their shadow. You are still building your inner world around their face. They may have spoken for 10 seconds, but you give them 10 hours, 10 days, 10 years, and then you call it justice. No, my friend, that is not justice. That is a soul leasing itself to an enemy. This is why the wolf is dangerous. It does not only want to bite the one who hurt you, it wants to become your identity. It wants you to wake up with bitterness and call it motivation. It wants you to confuse obsession with discipline. It wants you to sharpen yourself, not for virtue, but for humiliation returned. It wants you to build a life that says, "Look at me now," to people who should no longer be allowed to live inside your mind. And yes, revenge can build things. It can build a body. It can build money. It can build status. It can build a colder face and a harder voice. But it cannot build peace. Because whatever is built from revenge must keep feeding on resentment to stay alive. That is why many men reach success and still feel hunted. They have won in the world, but inside, they are still arguing with ghosts from childhood. The Stoic man in this story knows the teachings. He knows he should not be ruled by anger. He knows Marcus Aurelius warned against becoming like those who harm us. He knows the mind must be governed, not handed over to every impression. But knowing the lesson is not the same as surviving the moment. Because the wolf is not impressed by philosophy. The wolf does not care how many books he has read. The wolf cares about the wound. And if the wound remains open, the wolf will always find blood. So he must stop and ask himself a brutal question. Do I want justice? Or do I want them to suffer because I once suffered? There is a difference. Justice restores order. Revenge tries to export pain. Justice can be calm. Revenge needs heat. Justice is guided by principle. Revenge is guided by a wounded ego begging to feel tall. This does not mean he must forgive instantly. That would be dishonest. A man cannot force peace by painting a smile over poison. It does not mean he must tolerate disrespect. That would be cowardice, pretending to be wisdom. It means he must not let revenge become the god he prays to. He can set a boundary. He can remove access. He can speak once, clearly. He can refuse to remain where contempt is repeated. He can become stronger, but he must not become stronger only to make the past bleed. A boundary says, "You may not continue this with me." Revenge says, "I need you to hurt so I can feel whole." The first is self-respect. The second is slavery. My friend, the wolf will not disappear because he commands it to be silent. The wolf must be understood. It is not only rage, it is the protector of an old humiliation. It is the animal that appeared because the boy had no one else. So the Stoic man does not pretend the wolf is not there. He looks at it. He names it. He says, "I know why you came. You came because I was once powerless. You came because I once needed protection. You came because a part of me still believes pain must be repaid or it was meaningless. But I will not let you drive my life." That is Stoicism, in the dark, not the absence of violent thoughts, but the refusal to obey them, not a clean heart, untouched by anger, but a disciplined hand that keeps the chain from breaking. Because if the wolf breaks free, it may destroy the enemy for a moment. But afterward, it returns to live inside the man. And no enemy is more dangerous than the one you become. This is the second lesson. Revenge may feel like power, but if it owns your attention, shapes your dreams, and decides your actions, then it is not power, it is possession. And now we move to the third lesson. When the wolf begins to pull, the Stoic pause becomes the last rein before the cliff. The Stoic pause is the last rein before the cliff. The most dangerous moment is not when anger appears. The most dangerous moment is when anger gives you a plan. My friend, this is the third descent. The wolf of revenge is awake now. It is no longer only growling in the dark corners of the mind. It has begun to suggest actions. Send the message. Say the sentence. Expose them. Humiliate them. Make them feel what you felt. The Stoic man sits with the phone in his hand. His thumb hovers over the screen. A sentence is already written. Cold, sharp, precise. The kind of sentence that would not look childish to others, but he knows the truth. It was written by the wound, not by wisdom. This is where many men fall. Not because they are evil, but because they confuse intensity with clarity. When anger is hot, everything feels obvious. The enemy seems obvious. The punishment seems deserved. The response seems necessary. The mind begins to build a courtroom where you are the victim, the judge, and the executioner all at once. And in that courtroom, your ego always wins the case. But Stoicism interrupts the trial. It asks one brutal question. Who is driving right now? Reason or the wound? That question is the pause. Not soft, not comfortable, not poetic. The pause is a hand grabbing the reins, while the black horse is already running toward the cliff. The body wants release. The throat wants to speak. The fingers want to type. The pride wants blood. But somewhere deeper, a small voice says, wait. One breath, 1 second, one refusal to become automatic. That second may look like nothing from the outside. But inside a man, it can be the difference between dignity and regret. The Stoic pause is not weakness. It is violence redirected inward, not to destroy the self, but to restrain the part of the self that wants to destroy everything else. A lesser man reacts and then explains. A Stoic man pauses and then chooses. This does not mean he becomes passive. The pause is not surrender. It is not swallowing disrespect forever. It is not allowing people to step over him. The pause is where he decides whether his next action will come from virtue or from vengeance. Because there is a difference between speaking firmly and striking from pain. There is a difference between setting a boundary and throwing a blade. There is a difference between justice and the ego's hunger to make someone bleed emotionally. The Stoic man looks at the sentence on the screen. He reads it again. It is good, too good, sharp enough to wound. And that is how he knows he must not send it yet. Harsh truth. If your response feels delicious because it will hurt them, it is probably not wisdom. It is revenge-wearing perfume. So he waits. He places the phone down, not because the other person deserves mercy, but because his own soul deserves command. This is the part people misunderstand. Controlling your reaction is not about protecting the person who insulted you. It is about protecting yourself from becoming a cheaper version of who you are. Every uncontrolled reaction leaves a stain. Maybe no one sees it. Maybe you even win the argument. Maybe your words land perfectly. But later, when the room becomes quiet, you know whether you acted from strength or from infection. And a man cannot lie to himself forever. The Stoics called this discipline over impressions. The first impression says, I was disrespected. The second says, I must retaliate. The third says, if I do not retaliate, I am weak. But a Stoic man does not accept every impression as truth. He interrogates it. Is this insult truly about my worth? Is revenge necessary, or is my pride demanding a sacrifice? Will this action improve my character, or only feed my anger? Will I respect myself after this? These questions are the reins. Each one pulls the horse back from the cliff. Not all at once, but enough. Enough to breathe, enough to see, enough to remember that he is not a boy in the school hallway anymore. He is not trapped. He is not powerless. He does not need to prove his strength through damage. He can act, but he does not need to erupt. He can speak, but he does not need to poison. He can leave, but he does not need to burn the bridge behind him just to feel warm. My friend, the pause is where a man meets his real power. Anyone can react. Animals react. Children react. Wounded egos react. But to feel the fire rise and still hold the reins requires another kind of strength. A darker strength. A quieter strength. A strength that does not need witnesses. The Stoic pause says, I see the rage. I see the revenge fantasy. I see the old boy inside me begging for someone to finally pay. But I will not hand him the wheel. I will protect him. I will listen to him, but I will not let his pain write my actions. That is maturity, not the absence of anger, the governance of anger. And when the man finally chooses not to send the message, not to strike with the perfect insult, not to kneel before the demand of wounded pride, something strange happens. The anger does not vanish, but it loses its crown. It is still in the room of the mind, but it is no longer on the throne. This is the third lesson. The pause is the last rain before the cliff. Hold it, even when your hands shake, even when revenge tastes righteous, even when your pride calls restraint weakness. Because restraint is not weakness. Restraint is proof that the animal inside you has not become the king. And now we move deeper. Even when he does not react, the anger may remain. It becomes a hot coal in his hand, burning long after the insult has ended. The hot coal of anger burns, longer than the insult. The insult lasted 10 seconds. But anger can make a man carry it for 10 years. My friend, this is the fourth descent. The Stoic man did not react. He did not send the message. He did not strike back with the perfect sentence. He did not give the old wound permission to speak for him. From the outside, it looks like victory. But inside, the battle is not over. Because anger does not always die when action is stopped. Sometimes it becomes quieter. He goes to work. He eats. He answers questions. He looks normal. But beneath the surface, the insult is still glowing. Like a hot coal hidden in the palm. No one says it, but he feels the burn. He replays the moment while walking. He replays it while trying to focus. He replays it before sleep. He imagines what he should have said, what he could have done, how the other person's face would have changed if he had answered with the right cruelty. And every replay feels like control. But it is not control. It is participation. The event has ended, but he keeps feeding it with attention. That is the secret life of anger. It does not need the enemy to stay present. It only needs the mind to keep returning. The person who insulted him may have forgotten the sentence by now. They may be laughing somewhere, eating dinner, sleeping peacefully, living untouched by the storm they created. But he is still there, still holding the coal, still burning, still calling it justice. Here is the harsh truth. If you keep replaying an insult after the other person has moved on, you are not punishing them. You are doing their work for them. This is where many men misunderstand strength. They think holding anger means they are not weak. They think remembering every disrespect means they have self-respect. They think resentment is a guard dog protecting their dignity. But often, resentment is not a guard dog. It is a chain. It keeps you tied to the exact moment you claim you want to rise above. The Stoic man begins to see the horror of it. He did not react outwardly, but inwardly, he has been kneeling before the insult all day. He has given it his imagination, his energy, his silence, his sleep, his attention. And attention is the blood of the soul. Where attention goes, life flows. If he keeps pouring life into the insult grows. Not because it deserves to grow, but because he waters it. The Stoics understood this deeply. You are not disturbed only by what happens. You are disturbed by what your judgment continues to do with what happened. The first pain may come from outside. The second pain is often maintained from within. This does not mean he blames himself for being hurt. That would be cruel and false. He was wounded. Something in him was touched. The old thorn bled again. But now he must ask a darker question. How long will I volunteer to carry what someone else threw at me? Because that is what anger becomes after the moment passes. A burden you keep choosing. At first, he hates that thought. It feels unfair. Why should he be the one to let go? Why should he be the one to become calm? Why should the person who insulted him get to walk away while he does the inner work? But Stoicism does not promise fairness. It offers freedom, and freedom often begins with a truth the ego hates. Letting go is not saying they were right. Letting go is saying they no longer get to live inside your nervous system rent-free. He begins to understand. The hot coal is not power. It is evidence that the event is still ruling his body. His jaw is tight. His chest is tense. His thoughts are circling like vultures over an old battlefield. He tells himself he is preparing for next time. But much of the time, he is only reopening the wound so it does not have to become grief. Anger is easier than grief. Anger feels active. Grief feels exposed. Anger says, they will pay. Grief says, that hurt me. And for many men, that second sentence is far harder to admit. So they stay angry. They would rather hold fire than touch sadness. They would rather become hard than confess they were wounded. But the Stoic path demands a deeper courage. Not the courage to destroy, the courage to stop feeding the fire. The man sits with the coal. He does not throw it at anyone. He does not pretend it is not burning. He looks at it and says, this anger is here. It is hot. It is real. But it is not my master. Then he asks the question that begins to loosen the grip. Is this thought helping me act with virtue? Or is it only keeping the wound alive? Again, again, again. Each time the insult returns, he does not wrestle with it for hours. He names it. Memory, pride, old shame, revenge fantasy. Then he returns to the present. Not perfectly, not peacefully at first, but deliberately. This is how anger weakens. Not by one grand moment of forgiveness, but by repeated refusal to feed it. A Stoic man does not need to make a religion out of release. He does not need to say the insult was nothing. He does not need to smile and pretend his blood was not boiling. He only needs to stop carrying the coal as if it is sacred. Because rage can become sacred to a wounded man. It gives him identity. It gives him purpose. It gives him a story where he is righteous and the world must answer. But the price is terrible. A life built around an old insult becomes a shrine to the person who gave it. And a Stoic man must not build shrines for those who disrespected him. He must build character. So he sets the coal down. Maybe not forever. Maybe he picks it up again tomorrow. But when he notices, he sets it down again. That is the practice. Return, release, return, release, until the hand remembers it was not born to burn. This is the fourth lesson. Anger may arrive without permission, but it cannot stay without attention. The insult may have entered your day, but only you decide whether it becomes your identity. And now we go deeper still, because beneath the burning coal, beneath the revenge, beneath the iron voice of anger, there is something the man has avoided for years. The wound under the mask, the child who was never protected, the grief that rage was hired to hide. The iron mask falls, and the man meets the child who was left behind. Anger is often not the real face. It is the iron mask worn by pain that does not want to be seen. My friend, this is the final descent. The Stoic man has seen the thorn. He has heard the wolf. He has held the reins before the cliff. He has carried the hot coal and felt how it burned his own hand before it touched anyone else. But now, something deeper waits beneath all of it. The wound under the mask. For years, he believed his anger made him strong. It gave him a hard voice, a controlled face, a cold distance. It made him feel untouchable. It made him believe that no one would ever make him feel small again. But the truth is darker. The anger was not proof that he had healed. It was proof that something inside him still needed armor. He sits alone, long after the insult has passed. And for the first time, he stops asking how to strike back. He stops asking what he should have said. He stops asking how to make them regret it. And he asks the question he has avoided for years. Why did this hurt me so much? That question does not lead him to the person who insulted him. It leads him backward, to the schoolyard, to the hallway, to the laughter, to the boy who stood there with his fists clenched, his throat burning, his eyes lowered because looking up felt too dangerous. That boy wanted to disappear. Then he wanted to become powerful. Then he made a silent vow. One day, no one will ever do this to me again. That vow felt like survival, but over time, it became a prison. Because the man grew older, but the vow remained young. It did not know wisdom. It did not know virtue. It did not know Stoicism. It only knew shame and revenge. So every insult in adulthood became more than an insult. It became a violation of the old vow. And the boy inside him screamed, "You promised this would never happen again." This is why rage can feel so absolute. It is not only defending the present man. It is defending the child who once had no defense. The harsh truth is this: if you live only to prove your past wrong, your past is still controlling the direction of your life. You may call it ambition. You may call it strength. You may call it becoming dangerous. But if the engine is still shame, you are not free. You are only running faster with a chain around your ribs. The Stoic man begins to understand that revenge was never really about the other person. It was about trying to rescue the boy he used to be. He wanted to become so strong that the boy would never feel helpless again. He wanted to become so respected that the boy's humiliation would finally be erased. He wanted the world to bow because someone once made him feel invisible. But no amount of revenge can rewrite a childhood wound. No insult returned can protect the boy retroactively. No victory over another person can walk back into the past and stand beside him in that hallway. This is the grief under the anger. And grief is harder to face than rage. Rage says, "They were wrong." Grief says, "I was hurt." Rage says, "I will make them pay." Grief says, "I needed someone." Rage says, "I am powerful now." Grief says, "I was once powerless, and I still carry the memory in my body." Many men would rather become cruel than admit this. They would rather sharpen their personality into a weapon than sit with the child inside them who still feels abandoned. But a Stoic man must be braver than that. He must take off the iron mask. Not in front of the world, not for sympathy, not to become soft in the hands of those who harmed him, but in the private temple of his own soul, where no one is watching, he must tell the truth. I was hurt. I was ashamed. I wanted revenge because I wanted my pain to matter. That sentence is not weakness. It is the beginning of command. Because what you refuse to name will rule you from the dark. Once named, it can be held. Once held, it can be understood. Once understood, it no longer needs to drive the chariot. This is where Stoicism becomes real. Not in looking calm, not in quoting Marcus Aurelius, not in pretending insults do not touch you, but in refusing to let old pain become the author of new actions. The man can still set boundaries. He can still remove himself from disrespect. He can still speak firmly. He can still become strong, disciplined, dangerous in the noble sense. But now, his strength has a different route. Not revenge, not shame, not the need to make ghosts regret what they did. Virtue, self-respect, freedom. He no longer needs to make the world bleed to prove he exists. He no longer needs every disrespectful person to pay tribute to the boy who was wounded. He no longer uses anger as proof that he matters. He begins to matter to himself without the enemy's defeat. That is the turning point. The wolf grows quieter. The coal cools. The thorn loosens. The mask falls. And the man finally stands before the child inside him, not as a judge, not as a warrior, not as an avenger, but as the protector that child never had. He does not say, "You were weak." He says, "You survived." He does not say, "We will make them pay." He says, "We will not let them own us anymore." He does not say, "We must become cruel." He says, "We will become free." My friend, this is the final Stoic lesson. Control your reaction not because the world deserves your restraint. Control your reaction because your soul deserves a better master than rage. Revenge may feel like fire, but freedom feels like setting the weapon down and realizing you are still standing. The insult may remain in memory. The past may remain part of you. The wound may not vanish in one night. But you are no longer required to turn pain into a religion. You are no longer required to serve the altar of humiliation. You are no longer required to spend your life proving your worth to the shadows that once denied it. A Stoic man is not a man without darkness. He is a man who can walk into his darkness, look at the wolf, the coal, the thorn, and the wounded child, and still choose not to become a slave to any of them. That is not softness, that is sovereignty. And from that place, he finally understands. The greatest revenge is not making them suffer. The greatest revenge is becoming impossible for their cruelty to control. My friend, remember this. The insult was never the real enemy. The real enemy was the part of you that wanted to hand your life over to the insult. A word can cut you. A memory can wake the old wound. A moment of disrespect can make the wolf rise in your chest. But none of these things can rule you unless you give them the throne. Revenge will promise you power, but most of the time, it only keeps you chained to the person who hurt you. Anger will promise you strength, but if you keep feeding it, it will burn your hand long after the battle is over. The past will whisper, make them pay. But Stoicism whispers something harder. Become free, not harmless, not weak, not passive. Free, free enough to pause before the strike. Free enough to set boundaries without hatred. Free enough to remember the wounded child inside you without letting him drive the chariot. Free enough to choose virtue when rage offers you a weapon. That is the real victory. Not making them suffer. Not proving them wrong. Not becoming colder than the people who hurt you. The real victory is becoming a man they can no longer control. So when the insult returns in your mind, do not worship it. When the revenge fantasy rises, do not kneel to it. When the old wound speaks, listen, but do not obey blindly. Stand there, breathe, hold the reins, set the coal down, remove the mask, and remember who commands your soul. Because a Stoic man is not a man without rage. He is a man who can feel the rage, face the darkness, and still refuse to become its servant. The world may provoke you, the past may haunt you, the wolf may rise again, but your reaction is still yours. And the man who owns his reaction owns his life.